Adventures in Imperfect Living.
Greetings, folks. Welcome to the 500th? The 500th over there. 500th episode. I thought it was going to be over there. So this is going to be all screwed up. This is professional podcasting after 500 episodes of Adventures in Imperfect Living. My name is Greg Willits from rosaryarmy.com.
And I'm Jennifer Willits, his wife.
And as you can see, we're joined in studio by our good friends Mac and Catherine Barron. We haven't done a show with y'all since before COVID.
Before COVID?
Wow.
Yeah, the last time we all got together and recorded a show together was when we were doing What We're Dealing With. And
in the closet.
Well, we recorded an episode downstairs, right in our
Little
entry
did we
area.
know we were just just a boiling mass of COVID right there with us. That's what we were dealing with. We just didn't realize it.
So we were talking about going into the whole pandemic and how we were going to be dealing with it, and we were saying goodbye to you and all that kind of stuff. That was
Did
last
we
time.
really?
Yeah, I remember that episode.
Oh, that's so sad. Well, this is totally a
That's Mac.
celebration now.
Why are you clearing your throat,
Wow.
Mac? Why are you clearing your throat?
I don't know. I feel sweaty. You know?
Now we don't care about COVID anymore. We're so over it.
It's just so 500
episodes of this show.
500 episodes. That's
wanted to-
cute.
I-
500 is a cute number, isn't it,
I
honey?
wanted
It
to
is.
ask, what's your do you know the total? Like,
Yeah, so I thought you were going to start bragging. I was going to say, wow, that took less than a minute before you.
Well, it was. Go, you
so
get
we
that.
had-
this is why I was going to say,
the
what's your total?
Rosary Army podcast.
Yes.
There was 240 plus episodes of Rosary Army. When we were on radio, we were allowed to podcast 1 hour of the 15 hours that we recorded every week.
Right.
We could do 1 hour, and there were, I think, upwards of 150 of those that we did during our time on Sirius XM. So that's 300, almost 400.
Yeah.
There, if it was 150 and then 240, so you got.
So you're really getting close to 1,000. Like,
yeah,
all
yeah.
all
Well,
total.
and then that doesn't include the 72 episodes of Catechism class that we put together,
Sure.
and several other series that we did along the way. But so I don't know if you were to include. I was trying to figure out if you thought radio doesn't count, right? Because radio is different than podcasting. But if we were doing 15 hours a week of that, and we multiplied that, I don't even know how many hours of radio we did. So
A gabillion hours.
A gabillion hours is where we're at right now. But when our radio show ended, so we've been doing this show now for 11 years in its current format.
Adventures in Imperfect Living.
Adventures in Perfect Living. When the radio show first ended, for the first 99 episodes, we were calling it the same as the radio show. We called it The Catholics Next Door.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And our book that we had published was called The Catholics Next Door: Adventures in Imperfect Living. And I started to feel weird about this. Number one, I felt like we were ostracizing any non-Catholic listeners that wanted to listen or got stuff out of the show.
Yeah.
By saying the Catholics Next Door, it's like I felt like we were setting ourselves on this pedestal that I didn't want to be on anymore. We'd been on that pedestal for so many years.
That's funny. This whole dilemma of Catholic and embracing the identity of our Catholicism. We were really stuck on that 11 years ago.
Well, it wasn't embracing the Catholicism. It was putting
the title.
It was putting ourselves on a pedestal of like we are
As
the
if
pinnacle.
somehow you look at us, we are the Catholics next door.
and I never quite felt comfortable with that. So Adventures in Imperfect Living, since we also had that as the subtitle of the book, that made more sense because we are stumbling, we screw up all the time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
trying
yeah.
to strive for perfection.
Sure.
What I wish we had done I wish even when we went to radio, I wish we just kept Rosary Army. I wish it was Rosary Army all along. But when we went to
Lessons
radio,
learned.
they wanted us to have a different name. And so that screwed it all up.
We're all on a journey, but we're all on a journey, right? Like you didn't know what you didn't know at the time.
Well, the upshot is, and I'm being totally serious, is it gives people another talking point. When someone mentions you, they get to say, "Oh, but I was listening back when they were Rosary Army. You remember that? Oh yeah, I remember Rosary
You're
Army.
old school.
So it's like this. It's another sort of cool point, that they can earn. In
Well,
Well,
was
you're
gonna-
the only one that gets the cool point because I think you're the only one that was like
No.
listening to us back then and still
No,
listens
I
to
don't
us
think
now.
that's true. But also, what's really funny is your rebrand was still before most people,
most
podcasting
Catholic
became a
podcasts.
thing.
Yeah.
So, Catching Foxes, which I think started in I think they were 2013. They're considered like one of the original podcasters. Like
Pshaw.
And we've been doing it for 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, we had rebranded before they started their show. So,
Do they still do that show? I haven't heard anyone talk about that show in a while.
oh gosh, I don't even know. I don't know.
I'm sure they are, but because
I know I don't listen to that filth.
there's so many Catholic podcasts now, and that's we're always going to lament, and it's going to get really old to our audience pretty soon. I think we're kind of hitting the statute of limitations for us being able to lament about the good old days of Catholic podcasting.
Yeah.
When not only did all the Catholic podcasters know each other and kind of hung out, but we also knew all the listeners. You know, it's like I could throw certain listeners' names out, and you know who they are. If I say Mike Kuipers, you're like, oh yeah, I remember Mike Kuipers. You know, and if you throw out, you know, Sean in Canada, you're going, oh yeah, I remember just these different names. And what's weird is also it's like, you know, there are listeners that were a part of the audience that we heard from on a regular basis, and every once in a while on Facebook memories or whatever it is that they say, here's what we want you to remember that you talked about, whatever. I'll see comments from listeners from long ago will comment on photographs or pictures or posts, and these are people that have now been dead for several years. I think about Father Shane Tharp, who used to have Catholic Rage Monkey blog. His comments show up all the time. Father Dana Christensen, who just died a couple years ago, I see his comments show up in my memories all the time. Naomi Young, do you remember Naomi?
I
she
do
had like
remember,
a fuzzy head of hair. And she
I
was
do
in a
remember
wheelchair.
Naomi, yeah.
Naomi, you know, she shows up. D. Fox, you know, Deacon Tom Fox, and his wife just died earlier this year. You know, and so I see those names, and it's so strange that we've been around long enough that it's not like these are deaths that have just happened, but literally we've had like these Rosary Army soldiers who were listeners who've been gone a long time. And it's, you know, I don't think it's ever going to matter to anyone else but those of us who were podcasting early on, just because it was so special. And it meant the relationships that we developed not only with each other. I mean, we're friends because of podcasting.
Absolutely.
We live close to each other because of podcasting. And it's things like that you just can't erase, but it's those listener relationships. The first Catholic New Media Conference that we did in 2008.
So fun.
The main reason for doing that was not just to bring us together to talk about Catholic New Media, but so that the listeners could be there. We made it absolutely free. It's a come and hang out, because this is one thing when we're just on camera or on audio that will never, and this is like coming from the most introverted person in the room right now, it's never going to take over those connections, those hangouts in the bars, you know, after one of these conferences or at a meetup where you get to have a cup of coffee with someone or go out to dinner with someone. I think about people like Steve Robichaux, who we've seen a handful of times over the years, and you know, we dragged him to go see, what was that rock movie that we went and saw at the last CNMC?
San Andreas.
San Andreas, yeah. It's like
right.
we were having dinner with some folks at one table, and then we were walking out, and Steve was having dinner. Steve, we're going to go see this stupid movie. You want to go with us? Sure. Just dragging him to, you know. I can't tell you the last time we just hung out with listeners like that.
Yeah.
And I kind of miss it, you know. And I think with School of Mary, part of it with the community is my desire is to somehow start fostering that again, because I still think it's a highly missing thing in Catholic media now that we don't know each other anymore. And I'd like to say that again.
See that again.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about our children and how, like, Ben is here as a producer, and your son Walter.
And Lily is here.
Lily's here. Yeah,
in
Lily should pop
studio
in.
because her entire life she has just seen her parents podcasting, and it's hard to imagine the impact on a child, what it does. And you know, she has to carry a particular cross that her other friends at school don't carry.
And Jude too. I mean, Jude was born after you started podcasting.
Yeah, Lily and Jude were born within 6 weeks of each other.
And I think Tommy was like 11 months old when I recorded the first Rosary Army podcast.
Yes, Sam was 11 months old when we recorded our first show.
Yeah.
So he has no memories. Well, Ben doesn't really have any memories of pre-podcasting because he was like, 4 when we started. So their entire lives, all that they can remember, that's really crazy to think about.
Their parents have been sitting down in front of microphones once a week.
And putting that out to the world.
So
wow,
it's interesting. So you'd asked beforehand, what are we going to talk about? And Jennifer and I, we did kind of discuss, talking about the early days of podcasting, what it meant. And I don't want to jump too far. I don't want to jump ahead, but just kind of give us an idea of what we might want to talk about. And then sort of, at least for us, that break when we went to radio and then came back to our podcasting roots. And then there was a stumble for a few years. I think your show went through the stumble as well.
Yeah, until Patreon.
Until Patreon. Patreon really changed things because, again, it it connected us in a weird way. It was financially, it connected us to our listeners again.
Yeah.
And that really made a difference. We felt that obligation, which was a good obligation to have. And then where we're at now with it, and then where do you think things are going to go? Because we're coming up in March. It'll be 19 years since we recorded the first Rosary Army podcast, which is just really stupid, ridiculous, right? But going back to those early days, when I go back and I think of it, so like I gave a couple talks. I taught OCIA class at our parish the last 2 weeks, and I was asked to talk about, it's like, just because this is where they were at in the OCI classes was marriage and then contraception, natural family planning, and talk about those things. And it was really weird talking about these things because I kept thinking about when we would talk about those things in the early days of podcasting and how immature our faith was at that time, even though we thought it was mature.
Yeah.
We thought we understood a lot more. And so in a weird way with podcasting over time, I feel like I haven't gotten dumber, but I feel like I know less than ever before, if that makes sense. Like I feel like
you're more aware of your own lack of wisdom.
Exactly.
Than you ever have
I'm more
been.
aware of how little I know.
Yeah.
And after a while, it's just like and I've used this phrase. This has been a made up catchphrase that I've used for years. From the moment that we're conceived, we're 2,000 years behind the curve. We got a lot of catching up to do. Okay, well that's great. And that's a great way of excusing my lack of knowledge, but it is true. It's like I have no idea how I could ever possibly know as much as I'm supposed to know. I feel like it's a constant uphill battle. But I look back at those early days of podcasting. I'm like, here's this punk 30-something-year-old kid, acting like he's an authority on things, and people were listening. And it's really weird because it goes back to God, right? God, again, this is another phrase that we've all heard and used. God doesn't, how is it? God doesn't call the equipped.
He equips the called.
He equips the called. And that's really important, I think, for all of us, whether you're someone who sits behind the microphone or you teach an OCIA class, or you're doing anything at a parish level, or you're doing anything. It's like you're living out your faith in your family. How are you doing it, and are you allowing God to equip you, even though you are totally inadequate? We were totally inadequate to be Catholic podcasters. We're still totally inadequate to be doing this, and yet there's this responsibility. So,
well, in fairness to ourselves back then, I truly think that we were doing our very best to share the truth. We were actively searching for the truth, but the truth wasn't as easy to find. And when we thought we encountered it, now we know it wasn't really as traditional as it should have been or as true. Now we are aware in the last few years, like there is actually an older truth that is, really the one that we should be adhering to. And so we're living in an age where, as we are learning this exciting time to be Catholic, we can share that now from our place of wisdom. And I don't see that really going away. If we were to look ahead, I see podcasting being very integral in rallying the troops in a different kind of way. I think that we are headed for a lot more strife in our world where things are going to get perhaps even scarier. And this is a way that we can be a voice of reminding people like, okay, we can do this. We have God, we have the sacraments, we have the church, and don't give up, don't despair.
I'm hesitant to let you go down that route yet.
Yeah.
Because
that's fine. I know we're going to get there eventually.
I want to talk about the future of it, but I kind of want to. I want to
still look at the past.
Yeah, I'm really curious, Mac. From your perspective, when you started listening to podcasts early on, like, do you even remember what the first podcast, Catholic or not, that you listened to was?
Yeah, I think it was Father Roderick.
Okay, so when he was doing Catholic Insider?
Yeah, and y'all's was probably the second one.
Because podcast, but hadn't you already started with what's the film Spotting?
No, I found Catholic because that's the first thing I looked for with podcasting was Catholic, and sure enough, there was a handful there. And
was
you
there a
guys were
directory
right at the top.
yet? I mean, did Apple iTunes have?
When I discovered
was there
podcasts,
software there?
I remember the first time I heard the word podcast.
Okay,
and that was on an NPR story. By the time NPR does a story about it, there's a roots movement there, but it hadn't hit the OS level of using the Apple yet, and we got a Mac in 2003.
Ben was a year old. That's
And about a year, maybe a year and a half after that, Apple Music became a thing. Was it called Apple Music?
No, it was iTunes.
right.
iTunes. Okay, iTunes became a thing, and within a year of iTunes or a year and a half within iTunes becoming a thing, the little purple button appeared.
So we started doing our show in March of 2005, and they didn't have podcasts yet. You could manually subscribe to an RSS feed, and I
Yeah.
can't remember where it went on your computer, but you had to move the files into iTunes, and then you could plug in your
Yeah.
iPod.
I didn't
and
know about it at that
download
level. Yeah.
So, but that's how for the first couple months. That's how we had to do it, and I think it was like in May of 05.
We didn't have an iPod. There was no iPod.
Yeah.
Mac downloaded the podcast.
And you listen on the computer?
And we burned them
on
onto
CD.
disc.
Because I
CD.
wouldn't sit at a computer,
Yeah.
not during the summertime.
Yeah.
I was I rebuilt our porch. We had a porch that originally had been built like in the 20s, and it was always a screened-in porch, but the woodwork had rotted, and I was redoing that. And as I was redoing that, I was listening to burned CDs, episodes, like 10 episodes per CD of y'all's show and Father Roderick's show.
and film spotting.
What,
So
was,
like
what
you-
was Father Roderick's show called?
Catholic Insider.
A Catholic? No.
Yeah.
But
That
by
was Catholic Insider, and then he
Well,
eventually turned it into the Daily Breakfast.
by the
Daily-
time I discovered
Yeah.
it, started listening to it,
Okay.
it must have just made the switch.
Okay.
Because
He's-
I remember seeing the icon for Catholic Insider.
Yeah, he kind of started doing Daily Breakfast. That would have been fall of 2005 is when he started doing that. It was,
So
it
that
was probably
must have been
August,
when I
September.
discovered very shortly
Yeah.
thereafter. And then you guys started talking about you guys getting together.
Yeah, he came
And-
down. He came down for the Eucharistic Congress,
And
and
that's when I said, I got to go.
in summer of 2006.
I said, okay, go.
I live in Atlanta.
for
Yeah.
Father's Day, go hang out with your friend Ryan. And he was like, I'm gonna go see Greg and Jennifer. They're gonna be at the Eucharistic Congress. Can I go? Can I go?
So that was the
Whatever.
same day that we met you. We met our friend Captain Jeff Nielsen, who's there. I think that was the year like Immaculate Ilibagiza was there. We interviewed her. We interviewed Bishop Barron. Father Barron was the speaker that year, and so I had no idea who the guy was. But he was a buddy of the Archbishop at the time, and so they brought him over, and we interviewed him and interviewed Paul Thigpen that day. Just these people that had no idea that we would continue to kind of like circle around for the next few years.
Well, I think when I knew that podcasting could be something different was Mac was listening to y'all's show. And, I didn't care. I mean, I listened to music sometimes, but I just wasn't that person that had to have something going all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't care. But he was like, you need to listen to this particular episode. And I was like, why? And he was like, no, you really should listen to this. And it was when y'all had your miscarriage. And was it October of 05?
Yeah. I
September,
think-
October, yeah.
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 And so
Yeah.
he had me listen, and it was just so real, so unlike NPR, right? Which is all story based.
Yeah, it was
interviews.
unproduced in the best way.
It was yes, it was like, and it wasn't like you didn't know what you're doing. It was just you being real about something that had just happened. And I think reality stuff in general was beginning. It hadn't become what it has now, which is completely fake. And so it was this sense of it's a production, but it's a real life production. And so back to your point about trying to teach people, I don't think we wanted to share our faith, but I think as Protestants, former Protestants, you're taught that sharing the gospel is not complicated. Sharing the gospel is, here's what Christ is doing in my life, and I'm going to share that with you. And that was podcasting to us.
Yeah, and it kind of represented this weird sweet spot of being able to evangelize in your regular life, but you didn't have to look anybody in the eye when you did it. And so it's a little cowardly,
Yeah.
Low stakes.
Low
It is
stakes. Yeah, that's a really good
I'm
way
going
to
to
put
talk into this microphone, and it's going to go out in the world, and 99% of those interactions I'm never going to know about, and that's just fine with me.
But we ended up having the biggest impact. We had more of an impact doing that than we ever would have had.
Well, because you can only talk to so many people in real life.
Yeah, but I'm telling you what. I mean,
You were blown away.
I was blown away. But my success record in one-on-one evangelization conversations was zero. I mean, I was not successful in it.
On the receiving end of that, there's sort of the same phenomenon that happens. And I haven't really thought about this before, but like by the time you get to a point, unless you are one of these individuals that's born with just an unbelievable amount of charisma, and you've met these people in your life that you talk to for 5 minutes, and you're like, okay, I'll do whatever.
Or you go to the
he
Eucharistic
says.
Congress to meet
Yes.
them.
Exactly. Thank you, Greg. Unless it's someone like that, they have not earned the trust for you to believe in something that they're talking about. But podcasting kind of represented this thing where it was sort of new. You didn't know, you weren't hanging out with these people in real life on a regular basis. So as far as you knew, they're perfect, right? Like they're the same on and off the mic. Well, I mean, turns out you guys are, and I hope we are too.
Yeah, you're real.
But,
That's the goal.
But on the receiving end, you don't have to earn the trust, and that can be dangerous. But the fact that you have a show, and the things that you're talking about can be looked up.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a catechism, I can open the catechism and see that you're talking about the truth, right?
Yeah.
So already it's short, it's a shortcut to trust.
Yeah.
And the people who are longing for people to trust in their lives and are longing
That's a
and
good
are
point.
isolated for someone to talk about the faith because they're stuck at work in an unbelieving world.
I think
And
it's more important what you said. The people are longing for someone to trust. I mean, yeah, you're right about the longing for someone to talk about the faith, but they can get that from a priest. They can get that, but it's the trust. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
That's a
Well, and when you were real and raw about your miscarriage,
that earns you a certain amount
yes.
of not collateral.
not
Credibility?
Credibility
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
good way to put it. Like, here are people, they're going through maybe the same thing I'm going through, or if it's not the same thing I've gone through, I can at least sympathize with where they're at, and the way that you're handling this difficult moment speaks to people, because we've all suffered in different ways, and how do we handle those moments of suffering? And is that real or not? And you were believable. I mean, that's all I can really remember about it, because I honestly did not continue listening to your show, but I knew listening to what you were going through that it was real, like what was happening to you. If it wasn't real, you were incredible actors, you know?
So 2 points. You'd mentioned NPR and that kind of style of NPR show. And there was a movement amongst some early podcasters. There was something called Disciples with Microphones. Do you remember this at all?
Kind of remember that.
And there was one guy in particular, Carlos Briseño, who's still he's a writer for. I met him actually a few years ago at a conference in Illinois. He still is writing somewhere, but he actually did some NPR segments that aired nationally.
Oh, cool.
That he edited them and that kind of thing. when podcasting started, his vision was it was going to be like sort of every man's NPR. That we'd all be disciples with microphones. We could all go out when some story was breaking, and they needed to be these highly produced things where there are multiple interviews. And so then a lot of us, the rest of us, were sort of like, there are no frameworks for what we're supposed to be doing. So, like, we
All bets are off.
we put a Frapper map on our website,
gosh.
and just
Frapper map.
just go and put your click a pin to show us where you are. And so we had like 100 people signed up within a couple of days to where we had a map where we could see our listeners. And I went and I'm like, well, then I took my guitar and I wrote like a really stupid song called the Frapper Map song, where I just sang the name of all 100 people that signed up. No, 99. It was not. We almost hit 100. And then like Father Roderick did a remix of that. And then like even secular podcasts found out, because Frapper Map was the thing for a couple of
time,
weeks.
yeah.
And then they were like, this guy, he wrote a song about the people on his Frapper Map. And they played it. And I heard it like on 3 or 4 podcasts, this stupid song that I did.
That's
and
hilarious.
So there was just this high level of creativity. And then we started to realize we could do things like dumb little audio comedy things like Captain Catechism and Merry Metal. So anyway, but there was a movement for NPR. That was the first point. The second point, we're talking a lot about the early history. There was someone who tracked the early history, and I don't know if he kept it all. And it was Father Seraphim Bashoner from Catholic Under the Hood. And we didn't tell you this story. When we were over in Lourdes, that the part of our group, there were several priests that were there as chaplains. And there was a group of students from Franciscan University in their Gaming, Austria campus that were there. About half of them were nursing students, and the other half just went to volunteer to be helpers with this North American Lord's Volunteers. And there was a priest, Father Nathan, who was one of the friars from Steubenville, and he was over in Gaming. And I knew that Father Seraphim had spent time in Gaming. And I just said, do you know Father Seraphim Bashoner? And Father Nathan, he's like super happy priest. He goes, we were ordained on the same day. We were ordained together. And and just got so excited.
He's like, I'm gonna get a selfie.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
took a
selfie.
and sent it to Father Seraphim. The next day, Father Seraphim texted him back, said, do they have a rosary for me? It's like he didn't even say who we were. He just knew right away.
Yeah.
But I've always hoped Father Seraphim would go, because he's a history teacher. I would hope that he would go and pull out this stuff, because it's not just so that there's this, permanent record, but there were a lot of Catholic podcasts that did a lot of good, and even if they only lasted a year or two, or even less, there was this. It was the new evangelization, which we don't hear about anymore, right? That was something that John Paul II and Benedict XVI really promoted and
Is there a
encouraged.
book that people could get that would talk more about that?
Yeah, it's
Greg?
not very good though. It's pretty outdated. But
Well, think about it. When podcasting started, it was before social media.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Social media didn't exist. Facebook didn't
Pre-Twitter.
exist.
Yeah.
YouTube was coming into its
Hadn't yet.
zone
Hadn't yet.
right around
2005 was
Within
when
within
YouTube
months.
started.
Yeah.
But like social media wasn't a thing. So this sort of was that way to connect with people like you around the world and to use this medium of the internet, that it wasn't MySpace. That was weird, but it was a way to connect with other people. And like, we forget how isolated we felt.
Yeah, we were, and
at the
that was
time.
our name, Catholic in a Small Town, because we didn't know any cool Catholics.
And
didn't
you still
know
don't.
very many Catholics
We
at all.
didn't know very many Catholics.
Maybe like
at
20
all.
Catholics.
So then after we'd all been doing it for a while, I would say 2013, 2014, we started to hit a rut.
Yeah.
At least I could say for our show and your show. And I know some others as well that we started to hit a rut. Captain Jeff was the first one I knew that was using Patreon. And he and I had a conversation. He was like, yeah, it's, he's got all these airline people, because he does airline pilot guy.
Yeah.
He has all these airline people that were.
Is he still doing that?
Oh yeah. They've done several hundreds of shows as well, and I even actually help a couple times a year with that show, because he's got one guy, Captain Nick, over in England, who does the old pilots' plane tales, and every once in a while he'll send me an email and he's like, "Dear Greg, I'm doing this show and I really need an American accent. You have such a great voice." And he butters me up every time. I can't say no, And so about 2 or 3 times a year, he just will send me a paragraph, say, just read this, and then I'll I find out that it's on Captain Jeff's show. Anyway, but Captain Jeff, he encouraged us to get Patreon. Started it, didn't know if it would take off, and we literally had 100 patrons within the first month or two.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that was so. It suddenly went. We went a couple of months at a time without a show. And I remember seeing someone send us an email or left a comment or whatever. It's like, this would be a much better show if it was more regular, but I can't. So we had gotten to the point where we had, when we were doing the Rosary Army podcast, we got to a point where we were doing 2 a week. Now they were only half an hour at a pop.
Right.
But we did Saturday night or Sunday night and Wednesdays we would record a show.
Yeah.
And we were recording them 27 minutes and 30 seconds long, because we were having some interest in radio shows.
Yeah.
And so we were doing these half-hour shows, and they were very tight. We got through a lot of things in a very short amount of time. But then we hit this rut where after we rebooted the show, and then I got a job out in Denver, and life just became a lot. And then it just started to say, well, where is this? Well, what's
Where
the
is this
importance?
going? Why are we doing it?
Yeah, all those questions. And I see the downloads. It looks like people are still downloading, but we weren't hearing as much from people. The community had started to die away. There were more podcasts out there, so the audience started to get splintered and going in different directions, and there wasn't a community anywhere. And it wasn't until we set up that Patreon and suddenly we saw, oh my goodness gracious, these are people that really care about what we're doing.
Well, it mattered if you set it up as a per episode payment.
Yeah.
Then you don't do a show, you don't get paid, and all of a sudden that was an incentive to do it. Because before, what was the incentive?
Right.
This this podcast thing is costing my family, right? It's costing my family money. It's
In
not
time and
And
money.
time and money. We're taking away from our children. I think Jude was. We had 3 kids at the time. Jude was like 3 or 4 years old. He was a tough
Lot.
kid. He
I
was a
remember
lot.
that. It's a
And we would
handful.
literally, like, for a while, we could kind of do it when they would go to sleep, but
Yeah.
that got harder and harder because the boys are staying up later. And so we would try to do it on Sunday afternoons. We'd ship them off to my parents for the afternoon and try to get it done. But the Scouts had started up for you.
Yeah,
Like,
our show became a scouting show for a while.
oh my
Oh,
gosh,
yeah.
it was nothing
Yeah, I
but
know.
Scouts.
Unintentionally, it
remember.
was just what was happening.
Yeah, just recently y'all talked about scouting again on your show, and I was like, no!
Don't go back.
It's like you. I
The
was like,
poor people that actually listen to our show for scouting.
I think we got a bunch of
You did.
subscriptions
Yeah.
You did.
because people were into scouting.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we just stopped. We were just done.
Moved
done
away.
with scouting.
It's over.
But I remember Patreon all of a sudden because we were pod
I
fading.
remember the conversation, the first real conversation we had about
Patreon.
Patreon. We were pulling into a campground down
Sounds about
down
right.
near Savannah.
Yeah, Skidaway. It'd be Skidaway
Maybe it was
Island.
Skidaway that we went to, and
Yeah.
because you were reading an email from a listener that was encouraging us to get into it. It's like, well, maybe we should one more thing, but then how do you do the thing with the thing? You got to push the thing.
You got to do the button. Is it something else
Is
to
it something
deal
else
with?
I got to do? And it was because Ben wasn't on the production team at the time. I don't know what the crap we're gonna do when they move out because
You'll have to.
I don't do anything now.
well, that's talking about the future,
I
right?
show
Right,
up
that's part
and
of
I
the
press a
future.
button and I sit down with a lovely lady and I get to talk and be goofy for an hour. And then I, write up some show notes and Sam does his magic and we have a show.
We'll send it. We still know Ben. We'll just send him our files.
There you go.
We'll have him on retainer.
You're Ben. For listeners who don't get the connection, that you have a Ben and we have a Ben. You have a Sam.
And
we
you
have a
have a
Sam.
Sam.
So normally when I refer to your son on our show, even my own son on our show,
You say Ben Willits.
I say Ben Willits. It's like I just have to clarify. Ben Willits, Ben Barron, Sam Willits, Sam Barron.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
Do you remember the soundboard we used to use? What was the name of that program? But I had all those sound effects. Girl, you better stop. Remember we used to do that all the time?
Like Cast Blaster.
Yeah,
Cast
was it
Blaster.
Cast Blaster?
Cast Blaster was a program on PC where you
Oh my
could.
gosh, where we tried to
Record
use
the
that
whole
for a
thing.
while
Yeah.
because that was supposed to do everything. That was
And the
supposed to be able to
soundboard was on a Mac.
record it in there,
Yeah, that was
and
Cast
edit
Blaster.
it there,
Yeah.
and export it and all.
Well,
that
there have
stuff.
been different iterations of the show. I don't know about y'all, but we tried to do like where we would do it live every time, so the audience could be a part, and I think through the years we've just kind of, and I don't know about y'all can speak to this, but. And it is different for you guys because this has become your primary vocation, not your primary vocation, but your primary means of making money.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, it's never been that. It has always been a side gig, and it's always just been.
We
something.
were always into pure podcasting,
Right.
not like you posers.
No money is necessary.
but
We don't have to eat.
but we always had to figure out like, is this supporting our family? Is it taking away from our family? And like we have kind of pared it down to what is the most simple thing. How can we make sure we're going to do it every week? Because if it's too complicated, especially for certain people, then he's like, I just don't even want to do it. Like I've got work to do. I've got this class we're doing, whatever. I want this to be as simple as possible. As long as that's the case, we can make it happen.
But do you see your numbers going up or down?
We don't look at our numbers.
I'm sure
Smart.
they're down, but I've not.
And
looked at
so
them.
I know that doesn't. they're even. Is that even? Yeah. So Ben Barron is saying
Ben
that they're even.
looks.
So, and I only bring that up because I think this is just from whether it be my business background or whatever. Having some level of measurement of success is important. It's like, why do it if you're not seeing an upward trend? And so it is a part of for
I have
us.
an answer to that, by the way.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, because you enjoy it.
Well, sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. And sometimes it's a real struggle.
But it's different for you because this is your business. It's not the same thing.
Yeah,
You
for
just,
them.
you just, oh, for them,
But
it's
like
you because
when I
you
say
enjoy it.
you, I mean in
Yes.
general.
Oh,
Like
gotcha.
one reason for us to continue,
Yeah.
if we had 50 listeners, as
It's 'cause
opposed
you
to
enjoy it,
1,200 or whatever,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
because we enjoy it, and we've talked about this many times. It's been like therapy for us.
Marriage
Yeah.
therapy.
Oh,
Yeah,
like-
yeah, yeah. We talk about that too.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's huge.
And I think
we
I would have to have a
not-
mindset switch if so. Let me finish 3 thoughts back. with what we do now with Rosary Army and with School of Mary and investing in all of this to make it, worthwhile for people to grow in their faith. It's not that podcasting is the thing that supports the family. It's one tool in the whole tool chest
yeah.
of Rosary Army.
But it has always been.
And it's been because we've been doing it for so long, and we have developed a skill for it, and we do hear from people that say it's beneficial. Yeah. That's why we keep doing it. Every time I'm tempted to stop, we do hear from someone, and I have a very short-term memory when it comes to the positive things that people say, that I tend to dismiss it pretty quickly. But where we're at right now with it, and we could talk about the now and going into the future. When we made the decision to move back to Georgia, even then we weren't sure, are we going to be able to really build up Rosary Army to where it once was before we took the radio job, before we moved to Colorado to work for the Archdiocese and so on and so forth. I wasn't quite sure if that was what, if Rosary Army and growing it and doing media stuff was what we were supposed to be doing. But, God will send us these signal graces, these little notices of like, this is the path I want you to go on. And in the first year that we were back, so we moved back in February of 2019. In October, I mean, we were like, I got to go out and get a regular JOB again because
you were doing
this is not. I don't know where we're going, what we're going to do, and literally in October, out of nowhere, someone sent a $10,000 grant for Rosary Army. And on that same exact day, I was invited to give a talk in a men's conference that also, it was enough to pay a mortgage payment. And both of those happened on the same day. And
Wow.
and they were so unexpected. And literally, like, Jennifer got the mail, and we're just sitting there talking, and she got the Rosary Army mail, which we were just expect most of these to be requests for free rosaries. So we're like,
Yeah.
open up, there might be $1 or $2 from someone in most of these envelopes, and then suddenly she opens it up, and there was that $10,000 grant that we didn't even solicit for.
That does not happen very often.
That does not happen very often.
Maybe today there's
but
10,000.
But then literally, as she does it, then I look down at my computer, my laptop that was in my lap, and then bing, an invitation to speak
like
at
at
a
the
conference.
same time.
Like within a few minutes of
Yeah.
each other. Yeah. And it was sort of like, okay, we just have to trust. We have to keep doing that. And so my part of me constantly wanting to improve and like this year adding the video, and then we built School of Mary, and then constantly trying to figure out what is next is because I don't want to be that steward that buried the talents in the ground.
Yeah.
And that's, sometimes it's a healthy fear and sometimes it's an unhealthy fear. It's a drive that I constantly am like, how do we make the best thing that we possibly can with what little we have? I think the fact that we're able to operate and do as much as we do with as little operating capital as we have, and this past year, how much we were able to invest in the apostolate to be able to build things out and build out School of Mary and all of those. Every investment or every new thing that we try to do, it puts an enormous amount of pressure on me to not screw it up.
Yeah.
And so it's a kind of a positive, gerbil wheel. It's like it's more investment goes into it, whether it be in capital or just time and figuring out new technology or whatever it might be, but it will spin me up faster to do something more. But then that makes me need to put in more of an investment and do more stuff to keep improving it. And it's, it's a constant uphill battle, but Jesus also had to,
Yeah.
his journey ended on the top of a hill.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
I was going to ask Jennifer, because this is kind of an interesting topic as someone who you started out your marriage. Y'all got married in 96, right?
95.
Yeah.
95.
Yeah.
95. Okay.
So we just celebrated 28 years.
So you get married in 95. You were a working woman when you got married, had been working, had been very much on your own, very independent. Get married, very quickly become basically a stay-at-home mom.
In 2 years.
Yes. A
Yes.
stay-at-home mom to 4 boys in 4 boys in 8 years, right? You had 4 boys in 6 years because you had one every 2 years, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So by the time you'd been married just a few years, you're a stay-at-home mother, but you have all these talents, right? You have an accounting talent, right? You have some singing, you have
legal.
You have some legal, you have some singing, you have some acting. And suddenly this thing that you're not planning to be a part, like Greg starts his apostolate, you start Rosary Army, you're doing it together, right? It's a family thing. But the podcast in particular is allowing, because we all have this need, and I think this is becoming very apparent in our world in general, not just in Catholic podcasting, but just in general. We all have this need to create, right?
Yeah.
To make in some way. Like so much of our world is about plastic and getting cheap things from China, but we're realizing that doesn't satisfy a need that we have. And I know Mac has talked a lot about this because we were both creatives in college. I mean, we were both in musicals and theater growing up, and I sang. And so podcasting was a way to take those of us who were mostly, I work, but I mostly was a stay-at-home mom in a tiny little podunk town. We did a little, community theater in Swainsboro, which was fun. But I mean, how has, you think about how this has showcased your talents in a way, like as a mom, even as kind of maybe, Greg definitely does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the podcast side of things. But this is very much a joint effort here with you both using the talents that you've been given to make this thing work.
Yeah.
But how much of that is exciting in a way?
Oh, it was very much it felt like lightning in a bottle in those early years. And it was a lot of fun to just play in the sandbox that podcasting was in the beginning, because it was just whatever we could think, we would just do.
Yeah, we haven't even brought up that Catholic show.
Right. Yeah. All that creativity.
That was a huge ordeal
and
for you guys.
Yeah.
Just
in a good way.
Giving ourselves permission to play. And it was exciting because I would not go on the theater to sing, but I would sing on the podcast for fun. We would write parody songs all the time. And
was it your 200th episode or your 100th episode?
Both of them we tried to do.
You did the big musical.
One was the musical.
Yeah, the second one, the 200th episode, we did the Rosary Army, the musical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where we sang the classic hit, What Would Scott Hahn Do?
I forgot we did that.
But on 100th episode, we did a couple of we did she did a jazzy song about making rosaries, and then I did a Beatles parody of, hey, you gotta give your love away, that song. Hey, you gotta
yeah.
And sang
and
it,
mine was Hard Knock Life.
Sang it, hey,
parody.
you gotta make, pray, and give them all away, or something like
Oh
that.
my gosh.
Yeah, and it was.
But you can get away with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And now that we're doing video, it's I don't want to do the goofy. I don't want you to see me being goofy, right?
Yeah,
but when we were
that's
doing
true.
audio and we could just do different voices, and you're being an idiot, that was kind of fun. So,
Well, and one
but
thing.
what about now? I think were you asking about now?
No, just in general, looking
Yeah.
back, how it's allowed. I mean, none of us could have predicted where we are today with this. Who can? I mean, who can predict anything? If you had told me
Wait.
where we would
I
have.
think we could have predicted where we are today. Exactly where we were 10 years ago. Where will we be in the future? Spoiler alert. Exactly where we are right now.
Well, I'm just thinking how, I don't know, you guys especially, watching y'all's journey. We live, I think, except for the podcasting thing, we live a very much normal workaday life, right? We would have loved to have had a big family, but that didn't happen. So we have 3 kids plus 1, with our Tristan. And Mac has a job he's going to retire from very soon. Woohoo!
Yay.
And I have my nursing career. We've just, graduated from high school, went to college, got married.
So you're saying podcasting represents our secret identities.
Kind of.
It's like our other life.
Yeah. But for you guys, it's very much been kind of almost your identity over the last 20 years.
Except now, I feel like I'm leaving that, and as I'm now working at my daughter's school, where I am under the impression that most people don't know what I've done because I'm in a new area. And so I can hide
You can
very
hide in
easily
that.
and be anonymous amongst my peers and just be quiet little Jennifer, just grading papers. Nobody needs to know about my other life, this other thing that I did.
Your secret life as
Right.
as
And
a
so
podcaster.
it's just kind of funny that I walk around all day like, you have no idea what I've done.
You have no
And
idea
you
what I
don't need
do.
to know.
No idea.
I'm good. Let me just be present for you today and let me help you.
But it's been fun, I think, from this side to just watch y'all's journey.
Just like those idiots.
Where are we going?
What are they doing?
But no, I
What are they
remember when
doing?
y'all told us that the Catholic channel was flying you to New York to go interview, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Is this possible?
Every move
No
represented-
one ever called us
Every
to
move
fly us to
represented
New York.
like a lost opportunity for us. Like, look what they're doing. God, I'm stuck here in this crappy town.
And yet-
I was having my George, my It's a Wonderful Life moment. I was just kicking over bridges and stomped through my living room.
And yet, what Catherine just said a minute ago, and he'll be retiring soon. And I'm like, and I'll be podcasting till I die.
right.
And which, so that kind of like, that's a good lead into the future, right? It's like, what do we see in the future? Because I've said this to people. It's like, I have a hard time. I think we just said it today. We were doing another show this morning to our guest that I said, it's hard to imagine that God is going to want us still recording when we're 80. Who's going to want to listen, right? It's like,
just too old.
and we were joking.
We've
We were
been
like,
podcasting since right after the turn of the century.
and it's just sort of like, today we'll be talking about prunes, God's miraculous fruit. It's like at some point we won't have anything else to offer. But maybe we will, and I don't know what it is. And it's really hard to imagine. Again, I could not have painted this route.
Mm-mm.
And if I do start to think about it, I get really freaked out. And honestly, that's where I get in trouble, because every once in a while, for example, a job offer will come, and it makes me stop and go, am I supposed to keep doing this? We've been doing Rosary Army for going on 21 years. I think we're supposed to, and then I think about what happened every time.
I was going to say, and then you remember the last two
Well,
jobs you
and
took.
then I remember about when I got freaked out in the past, and I grabbed a job that came my way,
Right.
and it led to misery. And I'm like, well, no, I think I'm supposed to just keep trusting God that He's going to take care of things. As we're recording this, we're like a month away from our annual giving campaign, and so we're terrified again. It's like, this is our annual. It's not just Halloween season. This is when we get terrified of like our livelihood, and I have to fight regret of not having just stuck with a career and gone the regular route.
Interesting.
But have gone and tried to listen to what seemed like God was taking us in different directions, and we just went those ways. But we didn't have to. I could have chosen to just stay with a career and built up the 401k and done the standard thing. And so it's really it seems that things are even more uncertain now than they've ever been. We're in our 50s, and when we're around friends that are talking about things like retirement, and I might be a greeter to Walmart in 15 years because things, I don't know. But right now, it does seem like we're just supposed to keep doing Rosary Army and School of Mary.
Well, and even if
you
you are a greeter at Walmart in 10 or 15 years.
I hope not, man. I hope.
I mean, I hope not too. For
I
your
have to
sake.
believe that God loves me.
Most greeters at Walmart would also agree with that.
I know. No offense to greeters at Walmart.
Yeah. No. And from time to time we mention this. We talk about this, the idea that like on this side of the veil, we can't see the whole image, and God may have us do something that we don't care for 10 years from now that really doesn't make a difference to the kingdom. What He wants us to do 10 years from now really doesn't matter. What He wants us to do now matters.
Yeah.
Or what He needed us to do 10 years ago, did we do it?
Yeah.
That matters. So I would counsel you to not be freaked out, instead to grow in virtue and to pray for the Lord's will in your life and to accept that with confidence.
Not just that, but like, you guys are like a testament to that. Like, if anybody's life is a testament to the surprises of the Lord, the surprises
Catherine,
of Mary.
I know.
We keep forgetting.
Well, I'm going
that
to keep
he blesses
I'm going
us,
to keep
right?
reminding you
I
then,
know.
because from this side of things, like, I
Like, I don't know anybody else in real life who has tried to do the Lord's will in a way that you have. That, like, you didn't lead the normal life.
Yeah.
You stepped out in faith multiple times.
Yeah.
Even the Denver thing and the Indiana thing, I do feel like were steps in faith. There were recognition of this isn't quite right and we need to do something different. Oh, okay, we're going to step out in faith here. And even those steps, I mean, could we 10 years ago have imagined that our families would be 5 miles apart from each other? Like, that's incomprehensible. That would have been
Right.
incomprehensible 10 years ago. 10 years ago, in 2013, when we said goodbye to you guys, you know,
We believed it was
we
the real
believed it was
goodbye.
the end. We
Yeah.
were like, we may honestly never see them again. Like, they're going to Colorado. You know, this may be it for us as friends. And
They're going to
then
become Colorado people. They're going to be athletic and wear like this tight
Hey, we
pants.
did.
and-
for a
I
little
gained
while.
a little weight, but then I got trim.
Yeah.
I
It
got
took 3
my best
years.
shape ever.
Yeah.
But like,
And then we moved back to Georgia. And I rediscovered
did
Chick-fil-A.
that, and we never could have imagined that we would have ended up here.
Yeah.
To a place that you might actually consider moving back to. So you feel looking back on your life when you have a moment to do so, that if you trust the Lord, even in those moments where looking back you're like, Lord, did you really have me then? Was that really your plan for my life? And his answer is always going to be yes.
Yeah.
Like, it's always going to be yes, even to your point that that you were like, I've got to get a job. And Mary's like, no, it's okay. Because all things are available to me. Everything's available to me. I will drop the things in your lap when you need them to trust me. And I feel like your lives together have been that sort of like element of trust. And it seems like you've had to do that for each other at different times.
Yeah, we have to remind each other. I tend to need to be reminded of it more.
Because you're the negative introvert. You're
But-
the melancholic introvert. The melancholic introvert.
But
That's a better way to put it.
even, this year there have been huge blessings. The fact that last year we were able to raise the money that we did to do School of Mary.
Amazing.
The fact that School of Mary is online now. And that's, I'll be honest, I mean, part of the stress and part of the quote unquote negativity I'm feeling right now is because now I feel like I'm not going fast enough with new stuff for it, right? And that's just, again, that's just me.
It's just you.
It's the hamster wheel. But I stop and I think about, I've used this phrase and I use it kind of in a throwaway manner, and I don't mean it that way. We really do live on God's accounting and God's loaves and fishes, and there are months, and like right now we're starting to feel like I've made some financial decisions this week. Like I discontinued. I sent an email just this morning to I'm missing
Catholic
the,
fundraiser.
well, I wasn't going to be that specific, but a consultant.
Yeah, a consultant.
We've been using a consultancy company for the better part of the last year, and I had to send them an email this morning and said, we have to discontinue working with you. And I have another meeting tomorrow morning saying we have to revisit the financial commitment that Rosary Army has right now because, and so I'm starting to get nervous, but God has proven time and again, surprises happen. And part of me also, though, because I've also seen this track record that sometimes God gives us a huge consolation right before some other negative wave happens.
Yeah.
And so, like the trip that we just had to Lourdes was a complete gift as well. We were flown there, and we didn't pay for that trip.
Yeah.
That was a gift that was offered to us.
But that trip, even that, like I look back, like you were supposed to go in June.
Originally,
Yeah.
Lily's, the only reason you didn't go was because of Lily's passport,
Yeah.
which ended up coming in when? You were supposed to leave on Saturday. When did it come
the
in?
Monday after the
The
trip
Monday after the
Right.
trip.
left. After the trip left, while they were
I know.
over there.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
because you weren't supposed to go in June.
Yeah.
You were supposed to be there. You needed to be there in October.
Right.
That's what you needed.
But that kind of goes to, this is the way that my brain is operating, which is like, this is right before the giving campaign, and maybe the giving campaign isn't going to go that way. So it's like,
Well,
maybe
and it might not.
Right. Maybe
Yeah.
it was a level of, we need a consolation now for
Yeah.
the desolation that might be coming. And there might, and so, and I could be completely erroneous, that I might be showing a complete lack of faith. But I think it also shows just knowing I'm trying to just discern God's will.
and that's
and
okay.
where
That's
he
okay.
is
Yeah.
pointing things. And I can tell you, 2 months from now, I'll have great clarity of what, do we have another year's
succeeded.
marching orders
Or do we fold? Yeah.
and so I don't mean for this to be any sort of,
I said fold. Max said pivot.
Pivot. Oh, that's more
Do we
optimistic.
better way to put
pivot?
it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I honestly, I don't think, I don't
so
think we're going to have to pivot. I think we're going to stay on target. I think we're going to keep, and I think where we're at right now is this is where I think if anything, God is testing me right now and asking, did you learn your lesson before? when I allowed you to quit your job in the IT industry to run Rosary Army the first time, remember that? And you got to do that for a year and a half. And then what did you do? You took another job, and then you took another job. Or are you going to trust me, and are you going to stay the course? And that's kind of what I feel like is happening right now. But, you watch any movie about fishermen out in the ocean, and that huge wave is coming. Do you crash into that wave, or do you try to find a new course? It's really tempting to say that wave looks really dangerous.
So it sounds like the answer to the question, what does the future hold? And I don't know, we should probably go around. Like, I would say for me.
Yeah, you guys start. Let's go in this
Yeah, let's
direction.
go in this
Like,
direction.
10 years from now, you're going to be 57. And it's going to be the year 2033.
Is that
That
possible?
doesn't even
Is that
seem
a
real,
thing?
right?
That's not real. 2033, 10 years from now, I better have some grandchildren, is all I'm saying. Is anybody listening to me right now?
You better have more than one married child. Right?
I better. That's also true.
At least one married
At least
child.
one married child. We have one.
Well, you got one.
That's true.
Well, and we better be married. 10 years from now.
Maybe a priest in the family. But as far as like podcasting goes, I don't know, like our sort of vision for our future includes a retreat center. That's what our vision is, and we keep coming back to that. So we've even talked about the podcast, and our podcast has continued to be us sitting down talking about what's happened in our lives, what books and movies are we watching.
We've refined the format over a lot of trial and effort of different No, not a different thing.
Not
No,
a
it's pretty much the
different
same
thing.
thing.
Pretty much the same thing.
Since
Happenings.
Inceptions.
Are you not entertained? Mail and Patreon,
And
then
Catholic
Catholic
stuff.
stuff.
And so
Occasionally, our servant boy comes out. Remember our servant boy?
our servant boy, little
his-
Timmy.
Was it Timmy?
Timmy.
Yeah. Occasionally, Timmy shows up.
Boy,
Timmy hasn't been there
He
for a
hasn't,
while.
he hasn't shown up for a long time.
It's been a while. But anyway, I feel like that has been the simplified version for us. But the great thing about that is just I'll occasionally go back and listen to our old shows. And
Yeah, I heard you talk about that recently.
and it is really, really fun to go back and hear where we've come, how we've come, and what lessons we've learned, and to be able to go back and listen to those young, naive versions of ourselves. But also, like, we feel like we've kind of inadvertently created, like a family history for our children.
You have an archive.
Yes, of our lives. And so, like Max said, even if only 50 people are listening, I don't know, at this point, we're doing it for us to a certain extent. We're doing these shows for us. And
But you're helping a lot of people.
yes,
You
if
are
someone
still-
if someone happens to listen, all the better.
Yeah.
All the better. But because our show has such a different purpose than your show and has such a different need than your show does, I think it's allowed us to just kind of continue to be the same, and that's okay.
So 10 years from now,
We're going to be doing exactly the same thing.
sounds good.
But
Continue
talking about whatever it
talking
is
about
10 years
having
from now.
grandchildren.
Sounds risky, but I'm in.
So is that your prediction for 10 years?
10 years from now, I don't think we'll be living in Forsyth County. Hopefully, we'll have at least acquired the land and we'll have built a couple of the little tiny houses. And
If the podcast can help serve.
if the podcast can help do that, that'd be huge. And that is going to be a huge blessing if that comes to fruition, because every now and then we talk about that part, that this could draw people.
Yeah,
The podcast could draw people to that mission to help make that mission a reality for others in the way that our podcast has helped others. Our listeners can now help others in a different way and can reap the benefits themselves. It's a place that people can go and recharge and get closer to the Lord.
So in thinking about doing a retreat center, the podcast allows for a wider audience
Yeah, sure.
and a bigger base to sort of draw from and say, hey, you've been listening to us for 15 years.
And
Here's what we're doing.
We've thrown around wacky ideas like, if we had a little parcel of land off to the side where we need an artist in residence,
And his wife.
I could do all the accounting.
There can be
Can I do-
caretakers for the retreat
Can I do
center.
You
Latin
could set
class?
up a yurt.
You know what? We'll make you a yurt. Nicest yurt you ever seen. Sure. Jennifer can crunch the numbers on that for us
There
and
you
make
go.
sure it's
I
within
just
the
need
budget.
a bunch
Is
of
it
old
yurt
Latin
worthy?
books. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, as we're working our
Well,
way
wait a minute,
around,
wait a minute.
I still
Are
want
you
to
done?
talk to them. No, I have a question for,
Oh,
for
okay.
Mac.
I would love to have some sort of teaching shop on
Woodworking?
our-
On property?
I don't want to call it campus, but on property.
Okay.
Yeah. The problem with that is woodworking is very loud. And so if you're doing a
okay.
silent retreat center, it's counterproductive to
You just have to have a big enough piece of property that you have those
and
very
to create
far
those
apart.
silent table
Yeah.
saws. I'll be the first in line to get one.
I do have a question about one of the benchmarks of your show, which is entertainment. You've been like at this for a long time, but what's interesting is as you are getting older
Yeah.
and as you are maturing in your faith and you are reading more works like from John Sr. that has informed your faith, and you're starting to maybe look at entertainment perhaps a little differently now, do you see that you're still going to be doing this,
No,
or do
totally.
you feel
And-
like you're pulling out of it a little bit?
Yeah, in as much as we could have a crisis with our format, that is becoming a real one.
Yeah.
Because the more that we've given up on pop culture, and spiritually are moving on, and that's a process, the less we are appealing to the now, and that's been a bedrock of
Of
our
our
format.
show, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's a real issue. Now, hopefully, our audience is coming with us.
Yeah.
And we're able to provide stuff that rises above the average pop culture.
Yeah.
You're eventually going to get to a point where you just need to start tackling John Senior's 1,000 good books, and that's what's been entertaining.
Yeah,
me,
and that's what's
you know?
been entertaining us.
That'd be tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't
You'd
think
get
you-
a whole different audience
well,
for that.
Yeah.
and I don't think
so.
you even have to do it from the depth that you do when you talk about one of his essays. Where I would think that it requires a lot of pre-thought
It
and,
does.
and that kind of thing to put together.
But you're not gonna dive into the theological underpinnings of Treasure Island.
But that's what I'm saying.
Treasure Island is on the list.
But that's
right?
what I'm saying,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so that would be, and then I'll be your biggest adversary of like spoilers. the book has been out for
It's a
300 years. Greg.
600-year-old book. But I haven't read it.
I didn't know that y'all were going to read it. You didn't tell me, and now you read it faster than I can catch up. Now I got to skip your show, and I'll never go back and listen to it.
Sorry. All right, well, Jennifer, so what do you see as what do you see for the future of your show?
I think
Flying cars. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's definitely in there. I kind of feel like we're going to be doubling down. It's going to get very intense with our faith. I think we're not going to hold any punches. We're going to just go right to a very hard-hitting truth very quickly, because I think the world is going to need it. And so I think that there's room for that. And I think our show can play a role in that, which is kind of why we have tried to pivot a little bit towards total consecration, because that's very intense, very hard-hitting, and it's very confronting in one's faith.
Not a lot of wiggle room
Yes.
in
And so
total consecration.
I kind of see that. Well, one, I feel more confident now than ever before that, yes, we can talk about this, and I really don't care what you think so much, because it's still the truth, whether you believe it or not.
That's a good place to be.
And I can speak with confidence. but I also have had similar questions like, but how old am I going to be? Like, I am in my 50s, and I mean, you're still in your 40s, but we're a little further on. And, I'll do this as long as it serves and it makes sense. I'm happy to do it. I love what it does for our marriage. It has been a huge blessing.
Yeah.
We can talk about very difficult topics, I think, with finesse. Now, we're not perfect at it. I think when the microphones are not there, we can still kind of devolve to like just being mad and not, or just silent treatment or whatever that couples will do when they want to express their discontent with the other.
The mics act as the therapist. You know how the therapist in the room
They're the referee.
the mics are your
It's
referee.
the healthy filter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've loved it. I loved how I've been able to slowly like involve the children in our shows. Like Lily and I have actually done a couple of little bits together, and it's been super fun to have like mother-daughter conversations because it gives her a chance to sort of learn how to express herself.
There are times here, Lily, you can just pop up.
Just come on in.
There are times where I just wonder if I should
Have a
just
seat.
relinquish my seat to Lily. Because are
She's
you
on
going to
video
talk?
now.
Are you going to talk, or you just want to be
Do you
on
want to
video?
say something about what it's been like for you? Nah, you do? You have
And-
something
and-
to say?
In 10 years, what do you think the podcast
Here,
is going to be for
you
you?
can go to this mic right here.
In 10 years?
In 10 years.
You're gonna have your braces off.
You'll be 24.
Better. 24.
Do you think you'll ever have a podcast one day? Do you have any desires?
I don't think I'll have a podcast one day, but I mean, I have definitely thought about it because it's just like a really natural part of my life now. Just because like I literally haven't known a life without my parents podcasting. So I guess I've definitely just kind of thought about it, especially when I was younger. I guess I just kind of assumed that that'd be a part of my life when I grow up. But I really don't know. Like in 10 years, I'm sure y'all will still be doing it. Like,
You can start the podcast for the nunnery that you're a part of.
the nunnery.
Yes, because you're going to a nunnery.
Get thee to a nunnery.
You're going to be a nun and Jude's going to be a priest. That's the deal.
Oh, that's a great show.
You two having
Oh,
a
that would be
podcast.
hilarious.
Or
That'd be so funny. Or what?
I could just listen to God's will.
God's will for you to start a podcast with a priest that you've known since you were a baby.
Or
You're hilarious.
So has this been interesting to listen to? Are you getting an education in Catholic podcasting history, or
I thought you were talking about like have I listened to like this current podcast?
yeah, this current what we've been talking about?
Or have you mostly been over on your iPad chatting with your buddies?
Okay.
I think so. And she leaves. Okay.
Lily's
So-
like, I have no comment. No comment.
So is that your
Okay.
vision?
Yes. What's yours?
I normally feel like in the past I've been able to claim being someone of vision. I can't see it. I don't know.
However, you have been wanting a studio for a long time,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
now
yeah.
you have it. Do you
Listen,
feel like
I want to say something about the studio because it's really impressive, and parts of that the camera don't ever see is the opposite wall where you've knocked that out and you've created this 1-to-1 scale reproduction of the lobby from Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's got that.
Yeah.
I mean, that
just for us.
Tyrannosaurus
That's pretty impressive.
really pays off.
With the
Every time I walk
the T-Rex
in,
skeleton right there.
Yeah, he's stuck in that roar.
And that big
pose.
banner that we just have in that constant. We
Yeah,
have
it
a fan
looks-
set up so that
Yeah, it's like
constantly-
Beyonce's hair.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
it's good. It's really impressive. You've done a fine job.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm
That
glad-
Rosary Army money is well spent. It's a wall, people. It's a wall with a
It
curtain.
really is.
So my prediction is in 10 years we'll have different friends. No, I don't have the vision for it. Which I think sometimes that is what
Well, I think you want to stay focused on today. and
I'm
have
trying.
maybe the
I'm
best
trying
day
to do that. I'm
that you
trying
can.
really hard to just stay focused. Right now, this is where God wants us. This is what we're supposed to be doing. This year we've been, we started doing the videos. So we've done, how many videos have we done this year, Ben? 40 or so, probably coming up on 50. You don't know. We've done a lot of, if we've done a podcast a week all year long and we've missed maybe 2 weeks, I mean, that's a lot. We've done 50 hours of video this year, plus all of the, you know, the entire Total Consecration series, that's, I don't know how many hours that ended up being in total. But we have a lot more. I have a, you know, conversation with an author on a Wednesday where we're talking about having him develop a course for School of Mary. And so is it going to become less of me making things myself, or is it to help
Maybe produce things.
Produce and curate and bring in people that are experts in areas, because I can't be an expert on everything, and I think that the school is supposed to be something bigger than even I'm able to see right now. And 10 years from now, I'd like to see that I've gotten out of the way, and that I've been attuned to the Holy Spirit to connect with people that can help discover the clear vision of what School of Mary can be. You know, one of the things last year when we were talking with our advisors on the initial vision of it, and, you know, so like last year at this time, we were talking about the crazy amount of money that would be required to be raised so that we could hire the programmers and the developers to do it. And I said, it looks like it's going to cost this much. I couldn't have imagined that we'd be put in contact with the people that we've been put in contact with to do it. One of the things that was brought up from one of our advisors is, well, how do you take School of Mary and Total Consecration, and how do you actually have it be something that is a parish-based program? And that was a terrifying question for me, because it was a great idea. You know, it's like, well, of course, you know, going back to the beginning of our conversation, one of the things that's needed the most are these smaller communities. Smaller communities will always foster growth in the faith. Yeah. And we had a small community in the early days of podcasting, but parishes are communities that are waiting to happen. And oftentimes people, and one of the things that we've all heard from doing these shows is people say, listening to your podcasts are like discovering friends at parish, because I go to church every week and I sit by myself and I leave.
And I don't know anyone.
And I feel like now I know people in the faith. And so how could School of Mary in 10 years be a thing where people are signing up for School of Mary, but not just to do it online, but on a parish level? And I don't know how to make that
a reality at this moment.
I
just
can't,
not now.
I can't fully see it, but that suggestion was made from one of our advisors and a significant donor. You know, he's the person that basically made School of Mary happen this year. He gave us a huge matching grant last year that we were able to challenge people to donate, because, you know, he would match every dollar up to $50,000 last year. Wow. Couldn't have done that without that. I mean, that's crazy. But he's the one who asked the question about being in parishes. And then when I started to talk with different developers and different companies, the one that we went with, they had built a system for dioceses so that the dioceses could take things down to a parish level. Yeah. So School of Mary is already built to bring things to that parish level. To a parish level. But it would require building out the content, building out the infrastructure, having the people that can help manage those things. Yeah. You know, because, you know, so there's a lot of things. So I can tell you what I would love to see. Uh-huh. I would love to be working in more of an oversight and advisory capacity, and have other people implementing a lot of these things. I would love to have someone who's in charge of School of Mary on a parish level, in charge of School of Mary of producing and developing the content, and overseeing teams that are making these things happen. And I would just like to be a conductor. Yes, do that. And then be able to produce content. I would love, and this has kind of been in my heart a lot in the last couple of years. I would very much, you know, I've written 3 books, co-wrote one of those 3 with Jennifer, and they were fine at that time, but they were like our early podcast efforts. They were good for what we knew.
Yeah, at the moment. Yeah.
I feel like I know so much more, and I would like to have that time. I would like to be writing much more, because I feel like while I can share a lot of my heart in the podcast, I feel like once the week goes by and the next show shows up, that a lot of the best things that we say disappear into the ether sometimes. Yeah. And I feel a pull and I don't have clarity here yet, but I feel a pull to. I think that there's something I'm supposed to put down on paper that will be a little bit more of a lasting legacy than anything that I've ever recorded behind the microphone. And I don't know what that is, but I feel like there's a chance that in the next 10 years that we might start to see the beginnings
Being able to make that happen.
of books that I'm a little bit, the books that I've written so far, they were not timeless. The new evangelization in you, right? Mm-hmm. That I didn't know how disposable that idea would be, once the new Pope came about. But things like total consecration, if I can do anything to give new life and new awareness to the works of St. Louis Marie de Montfort, I feel like I owe him. I'm getting emotional. I owe him a huge debt, and I feel like as I get older, my time is going to start running out. I want to make sure that I'm paying that debt. So.
I think both of us are at an interesting place because our youngest children are the same age with Miss Lily there and Jude. And when you have these youngest kids like this, and it's tough for them, I think, because you are suddenly anticipating when they'll be gone in a way that you can, and it's not that you're ever done being a parent. That's not the case, but you're sort of where your day-to-day interaction with their day-to-day is tied up with your day-to-day. Mm-hmm. You're looking at the finish line of that, where your day-to-day is not tied up with their day-to-day. And that luckily, especially, in Georgia, they turned 16, they get their license. That begins to sort of pull away even as they turn 16, but certainly when they get a little bit older. And so you can begin to see life after kids and to have that time, and like for you, Jennifer, to have a little more time where all of a sudden you have to start asking the Lord, what is it now? Because where a lot of people, and we've talked about this many times on our show, not many times, we've talked about it, like we've seen couples who hit retirement and then everything's about
consumption,
spending money and going on cruises.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's
and
awful.
We don't ever I until I die, I want to be asking the Lord, what work do you have for me?
Yeah.
Not how can I get to relax now, but what work? That's an excellent point. I only have so much time here. What is it that God wants me to do with this time? Mm-hmm. What is his requirement of me? Mm-hmm. We all have primary vocations as spouses and as parents. And hopefully, like I said, I would love to be, I want to be a grandparent, but I want to know what work God has for me for the rest of my life.
Yep.
And I want to never stop asking that question. And one of the greatest things I think about podcasting is that it took our lives, which were just all about work and kids and church, and it made them something bigger than they were. Where you feel, I don't know if y'all felt it, but we felt a responsibility to our audience. Yeah. It in the sense that we're real people. We wanted to always be truthful with the people that were listening because real people were on the other side of those, those headphones hearing us. So we never wanted to lead someone astray if we could help it. There have been times when we led people astray, but we always tried to correct and say, I told you that show is good. I'm sorry. It's bad.
We only watched the first 2 episodes.
We only watched the first 3 episodes.
It was
episode 4 was terrible. So, just like you would with your real friends, we always wanted to be accountable to our listeners.
And the weight of that, in my opinion, has gotten heavier as the years have gone on.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes to what I was saying. It's like,
and you're dealing with content of more substance now than you were before. It's like you're dealing with more important toys. And how you treat those toys is more important. I mean, a couple of Sundays ago, in the gospel, it was basically for those who are given a lot is required. And for those who are given more, even more is required. The beatings will be even more severe if you don't do what you're supposed to do.
That was the gospel of Ben. That was what he gave to Peter Parker. He said,
to whom much is given.
What is the phrase, Ben Barron? Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. That's what it was. That was the gospel of Ben Parker.
We should probably just do like a cheers to
I tell you what,
podcasting.
I couldn't
in the
think of better friends to have shared this journey with. And thank you for celebrating our 500th episode of this particular iteration.
500.
500?
I love that.
500?
Thank you for
500th,
celebrating our
11-1.
500th anniversary of this iteration
Of this
our
iteration
show.
of whatever it is, because we have no clue what we were going to do 10 years ago, that this would be here now. And we couldn't imagine what's going to happen in 10 years from
We
now.
can't,
We
but-
may rename the show Rosary Army. And
No, we are not renaming. We're going to stay with Adventures, and Rose Army is always the presenter.
Imperfect
Whatever
living
we
in a
do.
small town.
Yes.
Imperfect Catholic living in a small town making rosaries.
Hey, there's an idea. Why don't we just combine our shows and then we could just alternate every other week, and then we get that's how
A
we
week
get the break.
off. Woo, nice.
We would immediately burn that bridge
Right.
because I would say something that you did not want on that show that your name is attached to.
That's a good
That's
point.
why it
Fair.
works the
Well,
way
guys,
it
thank you
is.
for spending a
fair.
perfectly good hour with us. And
Yes.
Thank you for hanging out with us and being here with us for this 500th episode of Adventures. And you know the rigmarole. We tell you this every week, but we mean it with our whole heart. Not only growing in your faith, do whatever you have to do to grow in your faith, to be holy, right? We say pray your rosary every single day. That's one of the greatest ways that you can grow in your faith and be holy. But continue to push forward, continue to ask the questions. What is God asking you to do in your life? What is God's will for you? What is God asking you to do to serve his kingdom here on earth? It's a challenge, it's difficult at times, but there is a great amount of joy that goes along the way. And so pray your rosary every single day.
And do whatever it takes to be holy.
God bless, folks. Talk to you in a few days.
Bye.
501 coming up soon.